This is what failure looks like, Marines. This is what happens when the Corps lowers standards to fill quotas instead of building warriors. Staff Sergeant Kyle Vance's voice cuts through the pre-dawn cold at Camp Pendleton like a blade designed specifically for humiliation. His words echo across the obstacle course yard where 43 recruits stand at attention, their breath visible in the California morning air that still carries the salt smell of the Pacific Ocean 3 miles west. It's 6 a.m. on a Monday in October, and the sky bleeds from black to purple while shadows stretch long across concrete and dirt that will soon become testing grounds for physical limits and psychological breaking points. Corporal Hazel Crane stands alone at the front of the formation. Her desert camouflage utilities hang loose on a frame that carries none of the obvious muscle mass displayed by recruits flanking her in neat rows. Her dark blonde hair is pulled back in a regulation bun so tight the skin stretches across her temples. Everything about her appearance suggests someone who doesn't belong here, someone who made a mistake applying for Marine Corps advanced infantry training instead of accepting the administrative positions that would have kept her safe behind desks and computer screens. Vance circles her slowly, performing for his audience with the confidence of someone who has executed this particular theater many times before. 20 years in the Marines have taught him exactly how to break people who don't fit his vision of what a warrior should look like. His boots scuff against gravel with deliberate loudness, creating rhythm that makes everyone wait for the next humiliation. Corporal Crane volunteered for infantry training, he announces, stretching each word to maximize its cutting edge. She passed the initial physical fitness test by exactly 2 points, minimum standards. That's who the Marine Corps is building our fighting force with now. People who achieve minimum results and expect maximum respect. Laughter ripples through the formation, not the spontaneous kind that comes from genuine humor, but the calculated response of people who understand that joining the mockery protects them from becoming its next target. Private Owen Nash stands in the third row with a grin that shows too many teeth. He's 22, with the kind of aggressive energy that comes from failing recon selection and needing someone else to blame for his inadequacy. "Send her to the kitchen," Nash calls out, his voice carrying false bravado that seeks approval from those around him. More laughter, louder now, emboldened by the implicit permission Vance grants through his silence. The entertainment value increases with each additional voice joining the chorus of dismissal. Hazel doesn't flinch. Her shoulders remain squared. Her hands rest naturally at her sides without the fidgeting or defensive posturing most people display when facing public humiliation. She breathes with a pattern that seems automatic, unconscious. 4 counts in through her nose, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out through barely parted lips. The rhythm never changes despite her heart rate responding to stress hormones flooding her system. 50 meters away, Gunnery Sergeant Roy Brooks watches from his position near the equipment shed. 25 years of service have taught him to recognize details that escape less experienced eyes. He notes Hazel's breathing pattern with the kind of attention that suggests recognition rather than curiosity. Combat breathing, box breathing, the technique used by reconnaissance Marines to maintain fine motor control under extreme stress, to keep hands steady when lives depend on precision, to preserve cognitive function when adrenaline tries to reduce thinking to primal responses. Civilian recruits don't know that breathing technique. Administrative personnel don't practice it until it becomes automatic. Someone taught Hazel skills that exceed what appears in her official training record, and Brooks files that observation away for future consideration. Vance completes his circle and stops directly in front of Hazel, close enough that his breath disturbs the air between them. "You understand you're going to fail here, don't you, Corporal? Infantry training isn't designed for people who barely meet minimums. It's designed to find the strongest, the fastest, the most capable warriors. You're none of those things." "I'm here to complete the training, Staff Sergeant," Hazel replies quietly. Her voice carries no challenge, no defensive anger, just statement of fact delivered with the same controlled calm that marks her breathing and posture. "You're here to waste my time and resources," Vance counters. "You're here because some policymaker in Washington decided feelings matter more than combat effectiveness. Well, let me tell you something about combat, Corporal. The enemy doesn't care about your feelings, bullets don't care about diversity quotas, and I don't care about whatever sob story brought you to my training cycle." He turns back to address the full formation, playing to his audience with practiced skill. "This is a teaching moment, Marines. Watch Corporal Crane carefully over the coming weeks. Watch what happens when someone confuses opportunity with capability. Watch what happens when pride exceeds preparation. The formation breaks at 6:15. Recruits disperse toward the dining facility for breakfast that must be consumed quickly before the day's training begins. Hazel walks alone while groups form around her like water flowing around stone. Conversations stop when she approaches, resume when she passes. The isolation is deliberate, systematic, designed to make her understand she doesn't belong among people who consider themselves warriors in training. Sergeant Cole Merrick falls into step beside her as she nears the DFAC entrance. He's 28 with a lean build and the kind of calculating eyes that suggest he's always measuring angles and opportunities. 3 years of active duty have taught him that advancement comes from being noticed by the right people for the right reasons, and right now being associated with Hazel seems like the wrong kind of attention. "Nothing personal," Merrick says with false sympathy, "but you're making the rest of us look bad. Command is watching this training cycle closely. We need perfect scores, perfect performance. You're dragging down the curve." Hazel continues walking without changing pace or acknowledging his presence with eye contact. She pulls open the DFAC door and steps into warmth that smells like coffee and industrial food preparation. The space holds maybe 200 people eating breakfast before Monday training begins. If you've ever felt underestimated, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. "Did you hear me?" Merrick presses, following her through the serving line. "I'm trying to help you understand reality. Infantry isn't for everyone. There's no shame in accepting you're not cut out for this kind of work." "I heard you," Hazel replies simply, accepting a tray of scrambled eggs and toast from the server who doesn't meet her eyes. She carries her food toward an empty table in the corner, the same table she's occupied every morning for the past 3 days since arriving at advanced infantry training. Lance Corporal Jenna Parrish watches this interaction from 2 tables away. She's one of the few female recruits in this cycle, which makes her acutely aware of how quickly judgment forms around people who don't fit traditional expectations. Jenna has kept her distance from Hazel, not out of cruelty, but out of survival instinct, understanding that associating with the designated outcast could redirect harassment toward herself. Still, something about the systematic nature of Hazel's isolation bothers her. Jenna has watched Hazel complete every assigned task with quiet competence. She's seen her finish runs in the middle of the pack, never first but never last. She's observed her weapon handling during range time, noting technique that suggests training beyond basic qualification. Nothing about Hazel's actual performance justifies the treatment she receives, which means the treatment serves some other purpose that has nothing to do with capability. The morning proceeds with mechanical inevitability. 0700 brings weapons inspection where Sergeant Merrick discovers dirt in Hazel's rifle barrel despite her spending 40 minutes cleaning it the previous evening. She's assigned extra duty scrubbing latrines while the rest of the platoon conducts communications training. 0900 brings land navigation preparation, where Captain Dean Lawson, the training officer, assigns Hazel to rear security during the upcoming field exercise, the lowest responsibility position that ensures she won't be evaluated on leadership or tactical decision-making. Rear security is important, Lawson explains with the kind of condescension that makes kindness feel like insult. Someone needs to watch our backs while the more experienced personnel handle the complex navigation tasks. Hazel accepts the assignment without protest, the same way she accepts every other slight and dismissal. Her face remains expressionless. Her breathing maintains its 4-count rhythm. Her hands never clench into fists or display the physical manifestations of anger that would give her tormentors the satisfaction of knowing they've succeeded in breaking her composure. Brooks observes these interactions from positions that allow him to maintain plausible deniability about his interest. He's not assigned to this training cycle directly, but his role managing equipment and facilities gives him legitimate reasons to be present during various exercises. Each observation adds detail to a picture that doesn't match the surface narrative Vance and others have constructed around Hazel. She moves with economy that suggests training in resource conservation. She positions herself at the edges of groups in ways that maximize observation while minimizing exposure to harassment. She completes assigned tasks with precision that exceeds minimum standards despite accusations to the contrary. Someone taught her skills that don't appear in her official record, and Brooks begins to suspect that omission is deliberate rather than accidental. The first 3 days establish a pattern that grinds with predictable cruelty. Verbal harassment during formations, social exclusion during meals and free time, professional undermining through assignment to menial tasks that prevent her from demonstrating actual capability. The treatment isn't random or spontaneous. It's coordinated, systematic, designed to achieve a specific outcome. Day 4 brings escalation into more visible sabotage. During morning physical training, Hazel's platoon runs the obstacle course in full combat load, 60 pounds of gear distributed across body armor and rucksacks. The course includes rope climbs, wall traverses, low crawls through mud, and a final sprint that tests cardiovascular endurance after muscular exhaustion. Hazel completes the course in 11 minutes 43 seconds. Not the fastest time, but well above the minimum standard of 15 minutes. She crosses the finish line without collapsing or vomiting, maintaining control despite obvious physical strain. Vance checks his stopwatch and frowns. The time is too good to dismiss, too solid to criticize without looking foolish. He needs a different approach. "Equipment check," he announces suddenly. "Corporal Crane, dump your ruck." Hazel complies, emptying her rucksack onto the ground where its contents spread across dirt and gravel. Standard load items appear one by one. Water bladder, first aid kit, spare uniform, MRE rations, entrenching tool. Everything required by the packing list. "Weigh it," Vance orders one of the assistant instructors. The scale shows 58 pounds, 2 pounds under the required 60-pound minimum. Vance's smile carries vindication. Interesting. Corporal Crane completes the course in acceptable time because she's carrying less weight than required. That's called cheating, Marines. That's what happens when people look for shortcuts instead of meeting standards. The accusation is absurd. 2 pounds wouldn't account for a 3-minute improvement in course time. Everyone present understands this basic mathematics. But the accusation isn't about truth. It's about creating a narrative that explains away performance that threatens the predetermined conclusion about Hazel's incompetence. "I weighed the load last night," Hazel says quietly. "It measured 62 pounds on the equipment room scale." "Are you calling me a liar?" Vance steps closer, using physical proximity as intimidation. "Are you suggesting our official scales are wrong and you're right?" "I'm suggesting scales can vary," Hazel replies with careful neutrality. "I loaded according to the weight I measured. If this scale reads differently, I'll adjust for next time." "Next time," Vance repeats mockingly. "You think there's going to be a next time? You think you're staying in this program after demonstrating you can't follow basic instructions about equipment load?" Brooks intervenes before the confrontation can escalate further. He approaches from the equipment shed carrying a clipboard that provides legitimate reason for his presence. "Staff Sergeant, I need to verify the obstacle course scales for calibration records. Got a report they're reading light." The interruption breaks Vance's momentum. He glares at Brooks with irritation at having his theater interrupted, but he can't ignore equipment calibration issues without creating liability if someone else reports inaccurate measurements. "Fine," Vance concedes grudgingly. "Corporal Crane, you're dismissed. Extra duty tonight cleaning weapons in the armory. Maybe that will teach you attention to detail." Hazel gathers her scattered gear and walks toward the barracks while Vance and Brooks discuss scale calibration. She doesn't look back, doesn't show relief or gratitude, maintains the same controlled composure that has marked every interaction since her arrival. Brooks waits until Vance moves out of earshot before checking the scale himself. He places a certified 50-pound weight on the platform and watches the reading, 48.3 pounds. The scale is reading nearly 2 pounds light, which means Hazel's ruck actually weighed closer to 60 pounds when she ran the course. Her time was legitimate. Vance's accusation was manufactured. The pattern continues through days 5 and 6. Hazel is excluded from live fire exercises despite scoring expert marksman during qualification. She's assigned to latrine cleaning duty while others receive tactical training. She's seated at the worst positions during mealtimes, forced to eat quickly before reporting to additional work details that keep her isolated from normal training activities. Through it all, she maintains her silence and her 4-count breathing pattern. Through it all, Brooks watches and documents patterns that suggest systematic harassment rather than legitimate training evaluation. Day 7 brings the field navigation exercise that Lawson mentioned during earlier planning. The platoon deploys into the training area at 0400 under moonless sky that turns the landscape into shadows and uncertain shapes. Teams of 4 navigate to designated checkpoints using only compass and map, demonstrating skills that separate competent infantry from lost civilians with rifles. Hazel is assigned to Merrick's team along with Nash and another recruit named Private Lucas Webb. Her position as rear security means she walks last, providing no input on navigation decisions, serving purely as an extra body to meet the 4-person team requirement. Merrick leads them confidently into terrain that grows increasingly rough as dawn approaches. Hills steepen, vegetation thickens. The trail he follows diverges from the optimal route marked on proper topographic analysis. Hazel notes they're angling too far north, adding unnecessary distance and elevation changes to their movement. "We should adjust bearing 15 degrees south," she suggests quietly when they pause for a water break. "Current heading takes us through the ridge complex. The valley route is shorter and provides better concealment from evaluators." Merrick doesn't even look at the map. "Rear security doesn't make navigation decisions. Your job is watching our backs, not questioning my route planning." Nash laughs. "Yeah, stick to what you're qualified for, which is nothing." They continue on Merrick's route. 30 minutes later, they're struggling up a steep ridge that requires both hands and rifle slings for climbing. The exertion costs time and energy that the valley route would have preserved. When they finally reach the first checkpoint, they're 40 minutes behind the planned schedule. The evaluator at the checkpoint marks their arrival time with professional neutrality. "Your fourth team to arrive. 3 teams already ahead of you. Need to pick up pace if you want to finish on time." Merrick's face flushes with frustration. He pulls out the map and studies it with visible confusion, trying to understand where his navigation went wrong. The problem is obvious to anyone with basic land navigation skills. He confused magnetic north with grid north, a fundamental error that added distance to every bearing they followed. "We can make up time by cutting through the training area boundary," Nash suggests, pointing to a route that would violate the clearly marked movement corridor. "Negative," Hazel says firmly. "Boundary violations result in automatic failure plus safety violations if live fire exercises are running in adjacent areas." "Nobody asked you," Merrick snaps. But he doesn't pursue Nash's suggestion either, recognizing that Hazel is correct about the consequences. They continue toward the second checkpoint with mounting tension. Merrick's navigation errors compound with each bearing, taking them further from optimal routes. By the time they reach checkpoint 2, they've fallen to 6th place out of 8 teams. The possibility of failing the exercise becomes increasingly real. "This is your fault," Merrick hisses at Hazel during their approach to checkpoint 3. "You're slowing us down. You're dead weight." The accusation is factually absurd. Hazel has maintained pace without difficulty, hasn't required rest stops or assistance. The navigation errors are entirely Merrick's responsibility, but facts matter less than the need to deflect blame from himself onto the designated scapegoat. They finish the exercise in 7th place, narrowly avoiding complete failure. Vance conducts after-action review with the kind of satisfaction that suggests he knew this outcome was likely. "Merrick's team struggled today," he announces to the assembled platoon. "Navigation errors, poor time management, failure to adapt to changing conditions, and I think we all know where the weak link was." His gaze fixes on Hazel with theatrical precision. The implication is clear, even though her position as rear security gave her zero authority over navigation decisions. She's being assigned blame for failures that belong to others, and everyone understands that truth doesn't matter in this performance. Day 8 brings the breaking point that reveals just how coordinated the harassment has become. The platoon prepares for a 20-kilometer ruck march with full combat load. Standard training evolution designed to build endurance and mental toughness through sustained physical hardship. Hazel packs her rucksack the night before with the same methodical precision she brings to every task. She arranges weight distribution to minimize pressure points and maximize load stability. She checks every strap and buckle for wear that might cause failure during the march. She places her water bladder where it can be accessed without removing the pack. The march begins at 05:30. 43 recruits move out in formation, boots hitting pavement in rhythm that creates drumbeat momentum. The route winds through Camp Pendleton's training areas, following roads that gradually transition from pavement to gravel to dirt trails that climb into hills where the Pacific wind carries salt and sage smells. 3 kilometers into the march, Hazel's rucksack shoulder straps separate from the frame. Not a gradual failure from wear, but sudden, complete detachment that drops 60 pounds of weight onto her lower back and hips in a way that makes carrying the load nearly impossible without proper strap support. She stops, recognizing immediately this isn't normal equipment failure. The attachment points have been cut cleanly, deliberately severed with a blade that left evidence of intentional sabotage. Someone accessed her gear during the night and created a failure timed to occur after the march was too far underway to return to base. Merrick passes her position without slowing. "Equipment failure, Corporal? Guess you should have checked your gear properly." Nash grins as he walks past. "Can't even maintain basic equipment. This is comedy." The platoon continues moving. Hazel stands alone on the trail with a disabled rucksack and 17 kilometers remaining. She can abandon the pack and fail the exercise, or she can find a way to continue despite equipment designed to fail. She chooses continuation. Pulling paracord from her repair kit, she jury-rigs a carrying system that distributes weight across her shoulders and chest in a way that approximates proper load-bearing. The solution is uncomfortable, unstable, requires constant adjustment, but it allows movement. She completes the march carrying 60 pounds with improvised cordage instead of proper straps. She finishes in 5th place overall, her time better than many recruits who had functioning equipment. She crosses the finish line with bloody grooves cut into her shoulders where cord bit through uniform into skin. Brooks is waiting at the finish line. He sees the jury-rigged carrying system immediately, recognizes it as field-expedient load-bearing of the type taught in survival courses that emphasize adaptation when equipment fails in hostile environments. He examines the damaged rucksack and notes the clean cuts that indicate intentional sabotage rather than wear-related failure. "Who had access to your gear last night?" he asks quietly. "Gear room is shared," Hazel replies neutrally. "Anyone could have accessed it." "But you know who did this." "Knowing and proving are different things, Gunnery Sergeant." Brooks starts to respond, then stops. Something in Hazel's tone suggests she's not as helpless or ignorant as her situation appears. She's accepting harassment without fighting back, which means either she's truly defeated or she's waiting for something specific to happen before taking action. Captain Lawson approaches with expression that cycles between concern and annoyance. "Corporal Crane, I need to speak with you about your continued participation in this training cycle." They walk toward the administrative building where Lawson's office provides privacy for conversations that shouldn't occur in front of assembled personnel. The space is military standard: metal desk, uncomfortable chairs, filing cabinets marked with security classifications, window overlooking the parade ground where recruits conduct drill practice. "I'm offering you an opportunity," Lawson begins once they're seated. "Voluntary transfer to administration. You've demonstrated you're not well suited for infantry training. There's no shame in accepting that reality and moving to duties that better match your capabilities." "I volunteered for infantry," Hazel replies with the same quiet firmness she's maintained throughout every challenge. "I'll finish what I started." "Finishing requires passing. Your performance suggests that outcome is unlikely." Lawson pulls out files that document her training scores. "You're consistently in the bottom third of your class. You're unable to maintain equipment properly. Your teammates report concerns about your reliability under stress. Every statement is technically defensible while being fundamentally dishonest." Hazel's actual scores place her in the middle of the class. Her equipment maintenance has been sabotaged. The teammate reports come from people actively working to see her fail. "Those assessments don't reflect actual capability," Hazel says carefully. "They reflect bias that predetermines conclusions regardless of evidence." Lawson's expression hardens. "Are you accusing your instructors of bias? Are you suggesting trained professionals can't evaluate performance objectively?" "I'm suggesting sometimes people see what they expect to see rather than what's actually present." The conversation ends without resolution. Lawson dismisses her with clear frustration, recognizing she won't accept the easy exit he's offering, which means the harassment will continue escalating until she either quits voluntarily or fails decisively enough to justify involuntary removal. Day 9 brings the physical fitness test that will become the arena for the most visible sabotage yet attempted. The PFT measures 3 components: pull-ups, crunches, and a 3-mile run. Minimum standards are well defined. Failure results in immediate removal from infantry training regardless of performance in other areas. The pull-up bar stands in the testing area like gallows waiting for execution. Marines approach it one at a time while evaluators count repetitions with mechanical precision. 10 repetitions represent minimum passing standard. 15 repetitions earn maximum points. Hazel approaches the bar at 10:30 a.m. when sun has climbed high enough to turn metal hot to touch. She grips the bar, positions her body, prepares for the effort that will either prove her capability or confirm everyone's worst assumptions. She pulls herself up. First repetition clean, complete. Second repetition the same. Third, fourth, fifth. Her form is textbook perfect, no kipping or momentum-assisted cheating. Pure strength applied with proper technique. On the 7th repetition, her hands slip. The bar has been coated with substance that feels like grease or oil, invisible to casual inspection, but effective at eliminating friction that makes grip possible. Her palms slide across metal that provides no purchase. She drops to the ground having completed only 6 repetitions, 4 short of the minimum passing standard. Inadequate performance, the evaluator announces with professional neutrality. 6 repetitions, below minimum standard. Nash watches from the crowd with barely concealed satisfaction. He visited the equipment shed at 05:30 that morning, before evaluators arrived to set up testing stations. He applied automotive grease to the pull-up bar with careful precision, enough to sabotage grip without being obvious to visual inspection. Hazel stares at her hands, noting the slick residue that confirms her suspicion about sabotage. She could protest, could demand investigation, could make accusation that might or might not be believed. Or she could adapt to the situation using capabilities she's kept carefully hidden throughout 10 days of systematic harassment. Request to retry using alternate technique, she says to the evaluator. There is no alternate technique for pull-ups, Corporal. You failed the assessment. Marine Corps Field Manual 3-04 authorizes rope climb as alternative upper body strength assessment when equipment is compromised. The evaluator hesitates. The regulation Hazel cited is real but obscure, typically applied only in field conditions when proper testing equipment isn't available. Using it here requires acknowledging that equipment might be compromised, which opens investigation into how that compromise occurred. Captain Lawson overhears the exchange and approaches. What's the problem here? Corporal Crane failed the pull-up assessment, the evaluator explains. She's requesting alternate testing using rope climb technique, claims equipment compromise. Lawson examines the pull-up bar, noting nothing obvious. He touches the metal surface and feels the slick residue that shouldn't be present on properly maintained equipment. His expression shifts from annoyance to something approaching concern as he realizes he's looking at evidence of deliberate sabotage in training that he's responsible for supervising. That technique isn't authorized for PFT, Lawson says slowly, working through implications that extend beyond this single test. Standard assessment only. The regulation specifically authorizes field expedient alternatives when standard equipment is unavailable or compromised, Hazel counters. This bar has been sabotaged. That meets the definition of compromised equipment. The standoff draws attention from recruits waiting their turn for testing and instructors supervising the evolution. Vance notices the disruption and moves to assert control over a situation that threatens to expose problems in training he oversees. What's going on? He demands. Corporal Crane is attempting to game the system, Lawson explains. Failed her pull-up test and now wants special accommodation using alternate techniques not authorized for standard assessment. Brooks has been watching from his position near the equipment area. He's seen Nash's early morning visit to the shed, noted his focus on the pull-up testing station. He's observed the pattern of escalating sabotage that has marked Hazel's entire training experience. This moment represents decision point: remain silent and let injustice continue, or intervene despite lacking direct authority over this training cycle. He chooses intervention. Captain, Brooks calls out, approaching the group clustered around the contested pull-up bar. I need to verify equipment for calibration records. Got a report about possible maintenance issues with the testing station. His words provide cover story for examination that everyone present understands is really about investigating suspected sabotage. Lawson can refuse and look like he's hiding something, or he can allow inspection and accept whatever findings emerge. Fine, Lawson agrees reluctantly, but make it quick. We have 40 more recruits to test today. Brooks examines the pull-up bar with systematic thoroughness that comes from decades of equipment maintenance experience. He documents the grease residue with photographs. He checks other testing equipment for similar tampering. He pulls security footage access logs that show who entered the equipment shed during early morning hours when sabotage most likely occurred. The evidence points clearly toward Nash, but proving intent versus accident requires investigation that will consume time and disrupt training. Lawson faces choice: acknowledge the sabotage and deal with its implications, or dismiss the evidence and allow testing to continue under conditions everyone now knows are compromised. Before he can decide, Hazel makes the decision for him. I'll take the failure, she says quietly. Score me as non-passing for pull-ups, but I'm completing the rest of the PFT to establish my actual capability in the other assessments. The statement surprises everyone present. She's accepting failure on the sabotaged test rather than forcing investigation that would expose uncomfortable truths about bias and harassment in training Lawson supervises. She's choosing to let the injustice stand rather than creating confrontation that might jeopardize the broader mission she's pursuing. Lawson seizes the offered escape. Agreed. Failure on pull-ups. Continue with crunches and run. Hazel completes 115 crunches in 2 minutes, earning maximum points. She completes the 3-mile run in 19 minutes 43 seconds, well above minimum standard. Her overall PFT score fails only because the pull-up sabotage cost her too many points to compensate through excellence in other areas. Inadequate overall performance, Vance announces with satisfaction that suggests he knew this outcome was engineered. Corporal Crane fails to meet minimum standards for continued infantry training. She'll be processed for transfer to duties better suited to her actual capabilities. The declaration should represent victory for the systematic harassment campaign. Hazel is officially failing, officially inadequate, officially proof that not everyone belongs in infantry training regardless of opportunity or desire. The narrative Vance has constructed throughout 10 days finds its validation in test scores that appear objective, even though they're built on sabotage and bias. But Brooks hasn't finished his equipment inspection. And the challenge coin that fell from Hazel's pocket during the pull-up attempt lies on the ground near the testing station, its surface catching sunlight in ways that suggest significance beyond mere metal and engraving. Brooks picks up the coin slowly, recognizing immediately what he's holding. The design is familiar from 25 years of service that included deployment alongside reconnaissance units. The serial number engraved on one side matches records he's seen in classified databases that document family members of legendary Marine Corps commanders. "Captain Lawson," Brooks says quietly, "I think we need to discuss something about Corporal Crane's background, in private, immediately." The urgency in his voice cuts through the post-test atmosphere. Lawson recognizes that tone, the sound of someone who has discovered information that changes everything about a situation they thought they understood. They walk toward the administrative building while Hazel remains at the testing area, accepting congratulations from recruits who passed while enduring silent satisfaction from those who watched her fail. She doesn't know Brooks has found the coin. She doesn't know the careful cover she's maintained for 10 days is about to shatter. She only knows that her mission is nearly complete. The assessment she was sent to conduct has documented everything it needed to document. The systematic bias, the coordinated harassment, the sabotage disguised as legitimate training evaluation, all of it recorded, witnessed, preserved for the institutional reckoning that will follow. The most dangerous person in the room has been hiding in plain sight, but not for much longer. Brooks closes the office door with deliberate care, the kind of controlled movement that suggests what's about to be discussed requires absolute privacy. He places the challenge coin on Lawson's desk where afternoon sunlight catches the engraving and makes the serial number stand out with sharp clarity, CRN-1957. "Do you know what this is, Captain?" Brooks asks quietly. Lawson examines the coin without touching it, as though physical contact might make whatever he's about to learn more real than he's prepared to accept. The design shows a monarch butterfly with wings spread in perfect symmetry, rendered in detail that suggests this isn't mass-produced memorabilia but something created with specific purpose and limited distribution. "It's a challenge coin," Lawson replies carefully. "Looks custom-made, probably commemorative." "It's Colonel Ethan Crane's family coin," Brooks corrects. "Only issued to immediate family members. That serial number corresponds to birth year and family registry. I served with Crane in '98, saw these coins exactly twice. Once when his wife visited during deployment. Once when his daughter came to base for Dependence Day." The implications settle over Lawson like weight he can feel in his chest. Hazel Crane. Not just another recruit who happens to share a common surname with a legendary Marine Corps officer, family, daughter, someone whose background would have been flagged in any proper personnel screening if that background hadn't been deliberately concealed for reasons that now demand explanation. "Why wouldn't this show in her file?" Lawson asks, already knowing the answer makes the question rhetorical. "Because someone at command level authorized identity protection," Brooks replies. "The kind that only happens for official assessment operations or security investigations. She's not here as a regular recruit, Captain. She's here conducting evaluation that we weren't supposed to know about." Lawson reaches for his secure tablet, accessing databases that require command-level clearance and multiple authentication protocols. He searches Hazel's personnel record with new understanding about what he's looking for, the gaps and omissions that seemed unremarkable when he assumed she was simply another volunteer for infantry training. The classified supplement appears after he enters his highest-level access codes. Official memorandum from Major General Patricia Hale dated 6 weeks prior. Subject line, "Confidential Assessment Operation Monarch." His stomach drops as he reads words that reframe everything he's witnessed over the past 10 days. "Holy cow," Lawson breathes. She's been conducting systematic evaluation of training culture and leadership effectiveness. Everything that's happened to her, all the harassment and sabotage, she documented it deliberately as part of assessing how we respond to perceived weakness. And we failed, Brooks says without satisfaction. We failed completely. I've watched personnel under my supervision treat her with coordinated cruelty that violates every regulation about dignity and respect. I've watched instructors I thought were professional demonstrate bias that compromises training integrity. And I did nothing substantive to stop it because I didn't have proof until now. She had proof, Lawson realizes. She's been gathering it this entire time. The question is, what happens next? The answer arrives sooner than either man anticipates. At 1100 hours, the combat lifesaver drill begins on the training field adjacent to the testing area. 43 recruits arrange themselves for the scenario-based assessment that will evaluate their ability to provide emergency medical care under stress conditions that simulate battlefield trauma. The setup is straightforward. Casualties with simulated injuries requiring treatment within specific time windows, while evaluators grade technique and decision-making. Standard training evolution designed to identify personnel who can maintain medical competence when adrenaline and fear try to override systematic thinking. Nash is assigned as one of the simulated casualties, his role requiring him to lie still while teammates practice tourniquet application and airway management on injuries that exist only in imagination and red-dyed corn syrup that approximates blood. He settles into position near a metal supply crate that marks his scenario location, prepared for 30 minutes of boredom while others demonstrate skills he considers beneath his attention. The drill instructor initiates the scenario with whistle blast that transforms calm training into simulated chaos. Recruits spring into action, responding to their assigned casualties with varying degrees of competence and confidence. Some demonstrate solid technique. Others fumble through procedures they've memorized without truly understanding. The evaluators observe with clinical detachment, marking clipboards that will determine who advances and who requires remediation. Nash shifts his position slightly, seeking more comfortable arrangement of limbs that will need to remain still for the duration of his scenario. His boot catches on the crate's corner. The metal container tips, its unsecured lid sliding free. Nash tries to catch himself, but the ground is uneven from previous training that churned dirt into loose soil, offering no purchase. He falls badly. The back of his head strikes the crate's edge with sound that carries across the training field like branch snapping under excessive weight. The simulated injury becomes real as skull meets metal with force sufficient to split scalp and create the kind of bleeding that can't be dismissed as training theater. Nash collapses, unconscious, before his body completes its descent to dirt that begins soaking up blood with disturbing speed. The scenario transforms from controlled training into genuine emergency that exposes the difference between practiced response and actual capability under pressure nobody anticipated. "Get Doc Ramirez," Vance shouts into his radio, referring to the medical instructor positioned 200 meters away at the aid station. "Real injury, head trauma, we need immediate response." 40 recruits stand frozen. They've trained for simulated emergencies, but confronting actual medical crisis proves paralyzing when reality strips away the safety net of knowing this is just practice. Blood pools beneath Nash's head with visceral confirmation that this situation requires intervention beyond calling for help and hoping professionals arrive quickly enough to matter. Hazel doesn't hesitate. She covers the distance to Nash in seconds, her movement immediate and decisive in ways that contrast sharply with the general paralysis affecting everyone else present. She drops to her knees beside him, hands already moving through assessment protocols with systematic precision that suggests extensive training in emergency response. "Nobody move," she commands with voice that carries absolute authority despite her status as the platoon's designated failure. "I've got this." Her fingers find the pulse point on Nash's neck, checking for circulation that will indicate severity of injury and immediate threats to life. Strong pulse, rapid but present. Breathing shallow but adequate for immediate needs. The primary threat is the scalp laceration that's producing arterial bleeding, requiring immediate pressure to prevent shock from blood loss. She needs her personal medical kit. The comprehensive trauma supplies she carries despite regulations suggesting basic recruits shouldn't possess advanced emergency equipment. The kit she's kept concealed in her uniform's inner pocket throughout 10 days of training because revealing its presence would raise questions about why a supposedly inadequate recruit carries paramedic-level medical supplies. Without conscious thought about exposure or consequence, Hazel unbuttons her uniform blouse. The movement is purely functional, driven by medical necessity that overrides concerns about revealing what she's spent days keeping hidden. She needs the kit. The kit is in the inner pocket. Therefore, the blouse must open. The fabric parts. Her hands reach inside to retrieve the compact medical pouch secured against her torso. The motion pulls the blouse open wider, exposing her upper chest to direct sunlight and the 43 pairs of eyes that have suddenly focused on her with attention that has nothing to do with medical response and everything to do with what's visible on her skin. The tattoo sits at her sternum, precisely centered on her upper chest, where it would normally remain concealed beneath uniform and equipment. A monarch butterfly rendered in black and gray ink with wingspan approximately 4 inches across. The design is beautiful in its precision, each wing detailed with patterns that mirror actual Lepidoptera anatomy rather than stylized artistic interpretation. But the beauty is secondary to what's embedded within the design. Coordinates run along the butterfly's body in numbers small enough to require close inspection. 4.0522 north, 118.2437 west. The exact location of Camp Pendleton Reconnaissance Headquarters. And beneath the coordinates a serial number that matches the challenge coin Brooks discovered, CRN-1957. The gasp that ripples through assembled recruits is audible, visceral, the sound of 43 people simultaneously recognizing they're witnessing something that reframes everything they thought they understood about the quiet woman they've spent 10 days tormenting. Brooks sees the tattoo first. He's positioned nearest to Hazel's location, close enough that the revealed ink is unmistakable, even from 3 meters distance. His eyes widen with recognition that transcends surprise into something approaching reverence. 25 years ago, he stood at attention while Colonel Crane briefed his unit about a mission that would become legend in Marine Corps history. He remembers the colonel's presence, his authority, the way he carried himself with confidence that came from never asking Marines to do anything he wouldn't do himself. And he remembers seeing that exact tattoo on the colonel's chest during a field shower setup when uniforms were temporarily abandoned in favor of desert heat management. The monarch butterfly that served as Crane's call sign during operations that remained classified decades after their completion. The symbol that became synonymous with tactical excellence and leadership that put mission accomplishment ahead of personal glory. Monarch Mark, Brooks says quietly, his voice carrying reverence that makes the words sound like prayer. Colonel Crane's daughter. Vance stares at the tattoo with expressions cycling between shock and horror as implications crash through his certainty about who Hazel is and what her presence here represents. This isn't some random recruit who couldn't meet standards. This is family of Marine Corps royalty, someone whose background would have been flagged at every level if it wasn't deliberately concealed for reasons that now seem obvious and damning. That's impossible, Vance manages, but his voice lacks conviction. The evidence is literally written on skin that can't lie the way personnel files can be manipulated. Captain Lawson emerges from the administrative building at dead run, Brooks's radio call having interrupted his review of Hazel's classified assessment orders. He arrives at the training field already knowing what he's going to see, but still unprepared for the reality of watching his worst suspicions confirmed through evidence that can't be explained away or dismissed. The tattoo is undeniable. The serial number matches classified records he's just finished reviewing. The coordinates point to Recon Headquarters, where Colonel Crane's legacy remains institutional touchstone 20 years after his retirement. Every detail confirms what Brooks tried to tell him in the office, what he wanted to dismiss as coincidence or mistaken identity but can no longer pretend might be anything except devastating truth. Lawson comes to attention with military precision that's automatic despite the chaos of the medical emergency still unfolding. His right hand snaps to his forehead in salute rendered with parade ground perfection. The gesture is immediate, instinctive, the response drilled into every Marine who understands that certain symbols command respect that transcends rank or situation. Corporal Crane, Lawson says formally, his voice carrying across the training field with clarity that ensures every witness understands what's happening. I was unaware you're conducting official assessment. My apologies, ma'am. The 43 recruits witness their training officer saluting someone they've treated as the platoon's weakest member. They watch as the carefully constructed narrative about Hazel's inadequacy collapses beneath weight of evidence that can't be reconciled with their assumptions. The cognitive dissonance is visible on faces that struggle to process information that contradicts everything they've believed for 10 days. Merrick's rifle drops from nerveless fingers. His carefully maintained expression of superiority crumbles into recognition that he's been mocking someone whose family connections and official authority exceed his comprehension. Every condescending comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment of calculated cruelty now carries implications that extend far beyond interpersonal conflict into career-ending misconduct. Hazel doesn't look up from her work on Nash. Her hands maintain steady pressure on the scalp laceration while she retrieves gauze from her medical kit with efficiency that demonstrates training far beyond basic combat lifesaver certification. She works with the calm competence of someone who has managed genuine trauma under conditions where mistakes meant death, not just training failures. "No rank here, Captain," she replies without shifting attention from her patient. "Just another Marine doing her job." Would you stand up for someone everyone doubted? Drop a comment below. Your answer might surprise you. The response carries implicit criticism that makes Lawson's salute feel insufficient, like attempting to correct 10 days of systematic injustice with single gesture of respect. He lowers his hand but remains at attention, recognizing that the proper response to this situation extends far beyond military courtesy into accountability that will require more than salutes and apologies. Brooks moves to assist with the medical response, his decades of combat experience allowing him to anticipate Hazel's needs before she articulates them. He positions himself to maintain Nash's cervical spine stability while she works on bleeding control. Their coordination is seamless, the kind of practiced efficiency that comes from training repeated until it becomes automatic under stress. "Pressure bandage secured," Hazel announces. "Bleeding controlled, airway clear, he's stable for transport." Doc Ramirez arrives with his medical kit and expression suggesting he expected to find chaos requiring his intervention. Instead, he finds Nash receiving care that meets or exceeds professional paramedic standards from someone who supposedly possesses only basic first aid certification. He assesses the situation with trained eye, noting technique quality that raises immediate questions about Hazel's actual qualifications. "This is excellent work," Ramirez says, examining the bandaging and stabilization. "Where did you receive advanced trauma training?" "Various places," Hazel replies with same neutral deflection she's employed throughout her time at advanced infantry training. The non-answer carries weight now that her true identity is partially revealed, suggesting training that remains classified above the level appropriate for casual discussion. The ambulance arrives 8 minutes after the initial injury. Paramedics load Nash with professional efficiency, their assessment confirming that Hazel's immediate intervention prevented shock and potential complications from blood loss that could have caused serious problems if left uncontrolled for the time required to summon advanced medical response. As the ambulance departs with lights strobing against clear sky, the training field settles into uncomfortable silence. 43 recruits stand in loose formation without the structure of official assembly but bound together by shared recognition that they've witnessed something that changes everything about the past 10 days. The woman they mocked, dismissed, sabotaged, and excluded has just demonstrated capabilities that exceed most of their combined skills. Brooks approaches the group with wallet in hand. He extracts a photograph that's been carried for 25 years, the kind of memento that survives deployments and career transitions, because it represents moments too significant to surrender to time and distance. The image shows Colonel Crane in desert camouflage standing beside a young girl maybe 12 years old. The girl wears dog tags that hang prominent against her shirt, their serial number visible even in the faded photograph, CRN-1957. "I took this photo at Camp Pendleton in '99, Brooks announces to the assembled personnel. Colonel Crane brought his daughter for Dependence Day, showed us the tattoo he'd gotten to commemorate his call sign from Desert Storm, told us his daughter would get the same design when she was old enough to understand what it meant to carry that symbol. He holds the photograph where everyone can see the visual evidence that connects past to present, that confirms Hazel's identity beyond any doubt or dismissal. The same determined expression, the same quiet confidence, the same bearing that suggests strength requiring no advertisement or performance. Vance tries to formulate response, some explanation that might salvage his authority or justify his treatment of someone he now understands was conducting official evaluation of his leadership. But no words come. The evidence is too clear, the misconduct too systematic, the consequences too obvious to avoid through rhetoric or deflection. "So this entire time," Merrick says slowly, working through implications that threaten the career trajectory he's carefully cultivated, "she was testing us, documenting how we treat people we perceive as weak." "And we failed," Jenna Parrish adds quietly. "She's kept her distance from the harassment, but she's also failed to intervene, failed to challenge behavior she knew was wrong. We all failed." Lawson's secure tablet chimes with incoming message flagged as priority command communication. He opens it carefully, already suspecting what he's about to read. Major General Patricia Hale's message is brief and devastating in its implications. Captain Lawson, your training cycle has been under evaluation as part of Operation Monarch. Corporal Crane conducted assessment at my direct order. Her identity was classified to ensure authentic responses. Assessment results will determine corrective action for personnel involved in documented harassment. Expect formal investigation commencing immediately. Major General Hale. Everyone return to barracks, Lawson orders with voice that carries none of the confidence he displayed 10 days ago when training began. MPs will be conducting interviews regarding incidents that occurred during this training cycle. Full cooperation is mandatory. The formation breaks slowly, personnel dispersing with understanding that their immediate futures have become uncertain in ways they couldn't have imagined when this day began with routine PFT testing. Conversations happen in urgent whispers as people attempt to calculate their exposure to consequences that seem inevitable. Hazel walks toward the barracks alone, same as she's walked for 10 days. But the isolation feels different now. It's no longer imposed by others, but chosen by her as she processes what comes next. The mission is complete. The assessment documented everything it needed to document. The systematic bias, the coordinated harassment, the sabotage disguised as legitimate training evaluation, all preserved in reports that will trigger institutional response. She reaches her quarters and finds it transformed by authority she didn't request, but can't avoid. Military police have secured the area. Investigation teams prepare equipment for interviews that will consume the next several days. Major General Hale stands near the window with bearing that projects decades of command authority earned through decisions that balanced mission requirements against human considerations. Corporal Crane, Hale greets her formally. Your father would be proud of how you conducted this assessment. Your documentation will change how we train Marines for years to come. My father didn't raise a victim, Hazel replies quietly. He raised a Marine who fixes problems instead of running from them. The investigation proceeds with systematic efficiency that mirrors the harassment it examines. Security footage from the equipment shed shows Nash entering at 05:30 on the morning of the PFT, his actions deliberately timed to avoid witness detection. Chemical analysis of the pull-up bar confirms automotive grease application designed to compromise grip without being visually obvious. Nash's financial records show $50 withdrawal matching the amount he received from Merrick for creating distractions during test setup. The evidence cascade builds through testimonies that document systematic pattern extending beyond isolated incidents into coordinated campaign. Jenna provides statement about social exclusion tactics. Other recruits confirm hearing Merrick and Vance coordinate assignments designed to prevent Hazel from demonstrating actual capability. Brooks's equipment logs show multiple instances where Hazel's gear was accessed outside normal hours, corresponding to sabotage incidents she experienced. The consequences arrive with bureaucratic inevitability that transforms individual decisions into institutional accountability. Merrick faces court-martial under Article 134 for reckless endangerment, specifically the sabotage that could have resulted in serious injury during the Ruck March. The charges carry potential for dishonorable discharge and federal conviction that will follow him beyond military service into civilian employment and security clearance applications. Nash receives non-judicial punishment for his role in the PFT sabotage and his contribution to creating hostile training environment. The formal reprimand enters his permanent record, creating barrier to future advancement that effectively ends his military career trajectory. He's reassigned to non-combat duties pending completion of mandatory ethics training that will attempt to address the judgment failures that led him to participate in coordinated harassment. Vance is relieved of duty immediately. His 20 years of service cannot protect him from demonstrated leadership failures that violated both regulations and basic principles of professional conduct. The investigation reveals pattern of similar behavior targeting other recruits deemed unfit for infantry in previous training cycles. His demotion comes with reassignment to administrative position where his authority over personnel is permanently eliminated. Captain Lawson receives formal reprimand for failure to investigate credible safety concerns and for allowing harassment to continue unchecked despite having authority to intervene. His next promotion board will see documentation of these failures. His career trajectory, once promising, now carries permanent stain that will limit future command opportunities. But individual consequences represent only part of the institutional response. Marine Corps Training Command implements comprehensive policy changes that address systemic issues. Hazel's assessment revealed. Anonymous reporting hotlines are established with protections for personnel who identify harassment. Equipment security protocols are enhanced to prevent sabotage. Bias awareness training becomes mandatory for all personnel in leadership positions. The most significant change comes through what becomes known informally as the Crane Protocol. Training cycles now include mandatory culture assessments conducted by personnel whose identities remain classified until assessment concludes. The policy ensures authentic responses while providing protection for evaluators who might otherwise face retaliation for exposing uncomfortable truths about how power gets exercised when authority figures believe nobody is watching. 3 days after Nash's injury and the revelation that transformed understanding about who Hazel is, she's summoned to Major General Hale's temporary office at Camp Pendleton. The space reflects the general's no-nonsense approach to leadership, furnished with functional efficiency rather than decorative status symbols. Maps cover the walls. Secure communication equipment occupies one corner. Coffee sits in plain mug rather than fine china. "I have 2 offers for you," Hale begins without preamble. "First, you can return to your previous assignment in military intelligence where your assessment skills are valued but underutilized. Second, you can accept position conducting similar evaluations at other installations where culture problems have been identified but not yet properly addressed." Before Hazel can respond, Hale continues with additional information that reframes both options. There's also reconnaissance requesting your presence for their assessment course. They're interested in personnel who can maintain cover under pressure and demonstrate tactical patience when immediate action would feel more satisfying. The choice represents different paths forward, each carrying implications that extend beyond immediate assignment into career trajectory and personal identity. She can return to safe intelligence work where her capabilities are recognized but constrained by bureaucratic limitations. She can continue assessment operations that fix systemic problems but require maintaining deception that isolates her from authentic connection. Or she can pursue reconnaissance training that will test whether her capabilities translate into elite unit qualification. "Depends," Hazel says after considering the options with same deliberate thought she's applied to every challenge over the past 10 days. Do they need someone to break or someone to build? The question carries implicit criticism of training culture that emphasizes destruction over construction, that values breaking recruits over building Marines capable of independent thought and ethical action under pressure. Hale recognizes the critique and accepts it as valid observation about problems that extend beyond this single training cycle into institutional patterns requiring attention. Both, probably, Hale admits, which is why I'm leaving the choice to you. Hazel returns to her quarters to find them returned to standard configuration now that investigation equipment has been removed and MPs have concluded their formal evidence collection. The space feels different despite physical similarity to how it appeared 10 days ago when she first arrived. Same bed with regulation-tight sheets, same wall locker containing uniforms, same desk with lamp and single photograph. But on the desk sits something new. An envelope bearing her name in handwriting she recognizes immediately. Her father's precise script, the penmanship of someone who learned to write in era before computers made cursive obsolete. She opens it carefully, finding photograph and handwritten note that require no additional explanation. The photograph shows Colonel Crane years ago, shirtless in desert heat with monarch butterfly tattoo visible on his chest in exact position, matching Hazel's design. The coordinates and serial number are identical. Father and daughter carrying the same symbol, representing the same commitment to values that transcend personal comfort or convenience. The note reads simply, "Legacy isn't given, it's proven. Proud of you, Dad." The words carry weight that formal commendations or medals never could. Her father's approval matters more than institutional recognition, because it represents understanding from someone who walked similar paths and knows the cost of choosing principle over popularity. He sent her undercover knowing she would face hardship. He trusted her to endure without breaking, and she did. The final piece of closure comes through notification posted on the Training Command bulletin board where all personnel can witness institutional response to recent events. New notice announces openings for reconnaissance assessment course. Applications are open. Hazel's name appears on the preliminary roster, placed there not by her own application but by Brooks's recommendation, supported by documentation of her performance under conditions designed to break her. Brooks finds her studying the notice with expression he can't quite interpret. Pride, perhaps, or satisfaction, or simply quiet acknowledgement that the next challenge awaits with same inevitability that characterized everything else about her time at advanced infantry training. "Your father gave me this 25 years ago," Brooks says, offering the challenge coin that started the revelation process. "Told me to give it to someone who earns it. You earned it twice over." Hazel accepts the coin with a nod that acknowledges both the gesture and the sentiment behind it. She doesn't speak. Words seem insufficient for a moment that carries meaning beyond what language can properly express. She simply pockets the coin and returns her attention to the roster where her name sits among candidates who will attempt to prove themselves worthy of reconnaissance designation. The bulletin board becomes gathering point for personnel processing what happened and what it means. Recruits who participated in harassment stand silently, confronting evidence that their judgment was compromised by bias they didn't recognize or chose to ignore. Those who remain neutral face their own reckoning about complicity through inaction. Even those who felt sympathy must acknowledge they failed to intervene when intervention might have mattered. Jenna approaches Hazel hesitantly, carrying weight of guilt that comes from understanding she could have done more to challenge behavior she knew was wrong. "I should have said something. I should have stood up for you when it mattered." "You're saying something now," Hazel replies with same quiet grace she's maintained throughout 10 days of systematic cruelty. That counts for something. The conversation represents a small step toward repair of culture that allowed harassment to flourish unchallenged. Individual acknowledgement of failure creates foundation for collective commitment to better behavior. But repair takes time. Trust requires rebuilding through consistent action rather than momentary recognition of past mistakes. As evening settles over Camp Pendleton, Hazel stands at her window overlooking the training field where this morning's medical emergency transformed understanding about who she is and why she's here. The obstacle course sits empty now, waiting for tomorrow's recruits, who will test themselves against physical challenges while being tested by evaluators, who hopefully learned from recent failures about difference between legitimate assessment and targeted harassment disguised as training. She thinks about her father's note about legacy that must be proven rather than assumed. She thinks about the Marines who will benefit from policy changes her assessment triggered. She thinks about recruits who won't face the treatment she endured because institutional response has created barriers against behavior that compromises training effectiveness while damaging human dignity. The most dangerous person in the room was never the loud, aggressive bully or the calculating careerist or the jealous peer seeking validation through another's humiliation. The most dangerous person was the quiet woman who documented everything, endured everything, waited for the right moment to reveal truth that could not be dismissed or explained away. Strength isn't noise, it's discipline when no one is clapping. It's maintaining standards when others abandon them. It's choosing principle over popularity and accepting the cost that choice demands. Her father taught her these lessons. The Marine Corps tested whether she learned them. And she proved through 10 days of systematic hardship that some things matter more than comfort or approval or the temporary satisfaction of responding to cruelty with equal cruelty. The monarch butterfly on her chest carries meaning that extends beyond family legacy or military tradition. It represents transformation, the biological process of changing from one form to another through stages that require surrender of previous identity before emerging into something stronger, more capable, better suited for challenges ahead. She went into advanced infantry training as Corporal Crane conducting assessment. She emerged as Marine whose capabilities and character were tested against adversity designed to break her. She didn't break. And that matters more than any score on any physical fitness test. That proves something no amount of documentation or policy change can fully capture. That demonstrates the kind of strength institutions need but often fail to recognize until forced to confront uncomfortable truths about their own blind spots and biases. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. Reconnaissance Assessment course waits with trials that will test different aspects of capability and character. But tonight she allows herself a moment of satisfaction about mission completed, about institutional change triggered, about proving herself worthy of legacy her father built through decades of service that prioritized Marines over personal advancement. The challenge coin sits on her desk, catching lamplight. The photograph shows her father wearing the same tattoo, the same determination, the same commitment to values that transcend any single career or assignment. Legacy indeed isn't given, it's proven through choices made when easier options present themselves, and through endurance when breaking seems like the only escape from hardship that feels designed specifically to destroy rather than develop. She has proven herself, not through single dramatic moment, but through 10 days of consistent performance under conditions engineered to justify predetermined conclusions about her inadequacy. She has earned the right to call herself Marine in ways that exceed physical qualification or bureaucratic designation. She has demonstrated that strength doesn't require performance or announcement or validation from people who confused cruelty with toughness. Strength is what happens when no one is watching except the person whose judgment matters most. Strength is maintaining discipline when every external pressure encourages surrender. Strength is choosing to fix broken systems rather than accepting them as inevitable or retreating to safety that preserves self while abandoning others to similar fate. The most dangerous person in the room is the one who understands power comes not from inflicting hardship, but from enduring it without losing sight of purpose that extends beyond personal grievance into institutional improvement. And sometimes that person needs to hide in plain sight, accepting mockery and dismissal and systematic cruelty, because the mission requires authentic responses that only emerge when people believe no consequences will follow their worst impulses. Mission accomplished. Assessment complete. Truth revealed. Justice served. And tomorrow brings new challenges that will test whether lessons learned today translate into lasting change or temporary accommodation that fades when immediate pressure releases. But that's tomorrow's concern. Tonight belongs to quiet satisfaction about work done well and standards maintained, and legacy proven worthy of the name she carries and the symbol she wears over her heart, where it remains visible, reminder of what she is and what she's proven herself capable of becoming.